Hello, and welcome to a new episode of From the Honeycomb podcast. I am your host, Katerina. Each week, we dive into a blend of topics that resonate with the soul. Whether you're an architect enthusiast, have a passion for wanderlust, want to discover holistic approaches to rejuvenate your body and mind, or are intrigued to learn about Vastu Shastra with a modern approach, you've come to the right place. Join me as I sit down with inspiring, like-minded women from various walks of life. We will delve into their journeys to discuss the challenges and moments that define their paths. So sit back, relax, and let the spark of positive energy ignite your curiosity. Hi, it's me, Katerina. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to share with you something that can change the trajectory of your life. If you are ready to start your own architecture firm but are feeling overwhelmed by where to begin, I understand, because I felt the same way when I first embarked on my entrepreneurial journey. This is why I have created the ebook, The Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm. This comprehensive workbook contains everything I wish I had known before starting my own firm. From building a solid business plan to creating your brand, The Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm offers a step-by-step guide tailored to your timeline, whether you're launching your firm today, next month, or in a few years. Dive into essential topics like financial planning, organization strategies, and how to secure your first client, all in one convenient resource. That's right, you don't have to spend hours researching. I have done that for you so you can focus on building your business. And that's not all. With your purchase, you'll also receive an exclusive meditation for business owners, mindfulness tips, a crystal guide for support, and gratitude exercises to help you stay focused and positive throughout your journey. Turn your dream of having your own firm into a reality with the Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm. Click on the link in the show notes to get your copy today. Now, let's dive into the episode. Today, I am joined by Ishwariya Rajamohan, a former architect and pastry chef turned certified coach and educator practicing in London. Working with clients from across the globe through coaching and teaching workshops, she supports female leaders in architecture with building the confidence to take the next step in their careers. Ishwariya, welcome to From the Honeycomb.
So much, Katerina.
As you know, we begin every episode by sharing something that we are grateful for in the present moment. So what are you grateful for?
I'm just looking out of my window, seeing a little bit of green again. And yes, I think this is a season of growth. And I'm just sort of in this moment reflecting on how much I'm growing and how much I have grown in the last few months. So I think it never stops. I'm always a learner, but particularly looking at the signs of growth is reminding me of how valuable that is.
No, that's beautiful with the spring, and there's something about the spring season that really makes you reflect on how much you've grown in the last year since last spring, and then especially just coming out of winter. I think that's really beautiful.
My culture, my part of India, and I think in Iran and some other cultures as well, they have the New Year celebrations in spring,
Yep.
which makes a lot of sense. And this letting go of the old and looking forward to the new.
No, absolutely. Well, Ishwariya, can you share with the listeners your story? I think you have an incredible background, and I'd love for listeners to learn.
Absolutely. I grew up in the Middle East. I grew up in Dubai. I'm originally Indian. After I finished school, I studied architecture in India. I practiced there for a little while, for maybe a year and a half before I came to the UK to do my master's in environmental design. And I really enjoyed it. It was a different work environment, but I really enjoyed what I did in the UK until the last recession started. And I was still a young architect, feeling like my career was going nowhere. And I started baking again as I used to as a child. And that prompted me to think of why not a career in food, because my career had just closed up so much. I wasn't really feeling a lot of encouragement in the workplace, and I just needed a creative outlet. So when this came up, I started thinking about, what could be the possibilities. I started out with applying for a job as a chocolate taster. I didn't get it, but that prompted me to look at other things that I could do. And then I moved from Wales to London to study patisserie at Le Cordon Bleu, and then joined that industry.
Wow.
And I think having the perspective of a previous career changed my, excitement from loving being surrounded by food and walking into a kitchen. They deliver things very early in the morning and you see this beautiful fruit and veg as you walk in, but then also being very conscious of the culture there. And maybe you're familiar, maybe your listeners are also familiar slightly with how much what a high pressure industry hospitality is, but then there's also a culture of slightly macho culture, which means you're neglecting yourself. And for me, my reaction was to set up a platform to speak out about that. I trained as a coach 3 years ago to support people in that industry. But then again, organically, women started approaching me with leadership issues, but dropping into the conversation their challenges with confidence. I noticed this pattern and I thought, oh, I'm going to check if applies to architecture as well. And I found the same thing. So that's where I've come back full circle, now coaching women in architecture, women in hospitality with that particular problem of confidence, particularly with taking the next steps in their career, whether that's a new role or promotion or even settling into a new job or project that they want because they're fighting maybe imposter syndrome or self-doubt, doubting everything, every move they make. That's where I'm currently.
It's interesting too, thinking about in architecture, and I believe probably in hospitality and even in culinary, it's, majority male industry.
Yes,
And
yes.
that makes a lot of sense on how when women are now entering those fields, it's, working with the majority male and how to work within that environment and the confidence. Absolutely. Like I completely resonate with that, especially being a woman in architecture and being surrounded by males and that masculine energy. And sometimes that kind of chips away at the confidence. So that's incredible that you have found this essentially like niche in a way, definitely a niche of helping women in architecture and in hospitality. Have you seen the two industries be very similar in that way?
I think it's the other way around where I'm seeing this across the board. I work with women also in industries that are not so male dominated or where there's a better balance. And it's the same issue. But particularly with male dominated industries, it's really hard to speak out about it. So I'm having conversations with women that are, at the stage where if nothing changes, I'm going to leave. They're not able to also see themselves very confidently in that next role. And that's what I help them with. So they're kind of in this catch-22. They either nothing changes and they leave, or, they don't even, perhaps they're not as confident to take a chance and put their name forward for the next opportunity.
And how has your experience helped you help others in like more, do you have any examples of moments where you had to learn how to be confident and how that has translated to your coaching?
I think the biggest thing that I sort of draw on is how I've taken risks and I've just gone for things. And it helped that I've had many careers. It helped that I've moved countries many times. But this is what is the foundation of everything, that I believe that go after the vision that you want, and then you don't have to worry so much about the confidence. You take risks and take a chance in yourself. It becomes less about the worries and the fears about how you'll do. And it sounds very, simplistic in the sense that we're all very accomplished women. But in those moments, it's very, very easy to doubt yourself and to worry about how things are going to turn out. So I understand it very much, but sometimes not sometimes, I would say all the time, if the vision is really strong and it kind of pulls you, you don't need to build up confidence, it pulls you. And that's what has been my experience. I've had no guarantee that changing cities, changing countries, changing careers was ever going to work. And I didn't even have what does it look like if it worked out? I didn't even have a frame of reference. So it was just trusting. And I'm not a very prescriptive coach. I don't really, here's 10 things that you should do to build up your confidence. I'm not into looking at management literature or something like that. And then studies of this works and that works, because I believe in empowering women to reach that feeling within themselves rather than with strategies. And it's not easy, but I feel it's more solid than the strategies, which you might not remember in the moment, because I've had spoken to women who really worry about, someone's just asked for a response either on site, or either it's a customer if you're in hospitality, or somebody on site has asked you a question that you don't know the answer to, and you go into a place of, oh, I should know. Trusting that, you are going to get the answer. If you don't know in the moment, have the confidence to say that, and that you will find out and you will know, rather than feeling less than.
And that's so true. You made me think of when I was, first starting out in architecture, and exactly, you're at a job site. You can't Google it, you can't quickly pull out your phone and they ask you a question. Somebody asks you,
Yeah.
a contractor asks you a question. And, I used to just kind of be like, well, fake it till you make it was kind of my mindset at first. And then I started to learn it's okay not to know and just say, that's a great question. Let me find out for you. So now that's kind of how I've changed the narrative of, oh, that's a great question. Let me find that answer out for you. That way you have like the right information. And I want to confirm, or I'll say that, because it is in the moment, you don't want to seem like you don't know, but sometimes you don't know. And so it's feeling that power of it's okay to say, I don't know, and I'll get back to you.
And I think it helps more women get work, get to do projects that go on site, because quite often I've seen this in practices. Women get assigned things like interior fit outs, and the more, the ones that I don't know what what the thinking behind that is. The nice materials and the nice colors are more suitable, whereas the technical work gets assigned
Mm-hmm.
to men in the practice. I don't know. I've seen that. I don't know if it's still the case with everyone or every industry, every region, but then it's okay not to know, and it's okay to hold your own even with that vulnerability. And it shows humility. That's how I see it. It shows humility, your willingness to learn, your willingness to trust other people, because you don't have to be the expert, and that's the right way. Because when I coach a lot of women, I find that part of this lack of confidence comes from being really good and meticulous at their work. Technically they're really brilliant, but then the questions come once you get your leadership role, not knowing the answers and having to deal with that. And I think women make great leaders. I'm stereotyping now. Women make great leaders because they can use that vulnerability to ask, would you know? Would you happen to know? Would you happen to have the
Mm-hmm.
expertise? So the burden doesn't fall on one person, it can be shared. There's a more flatter hierarchy. Everyone feels like they can contribute.
Mm-hmm.
That has been my experience of working with their teams. And I know that it starts with being vulnerable enough to say, I don't know, or I don't know the best answer. Someone else might know. How that's so powerful. And we can really lean into that.
Absolutely. And I like what you brought up too is, a lot of women get that interior job or, hey, pick out the color palette. I
Yeah.
have a friend who recently left a firm because of that, because she was given constantly this, oh, well, can you pick the fabrics and the colors and do the interior design? And she's like, yeah, but I went to school for architecture. Like, I'm in my architecture exams right now. And she ended up leaving the firm. And I mean, the firm lost a really great, talented woman who would really help the firm. And so it's interesting seeing that. And it's, you mentioned if it still happens in certain regions, it's happening here in Southern California still, even today. And it's frustrating to see. And I think that's another thing is it's been interesting seeing the shift in the generations of when you come into a firm and you're new, you're the youngest generation, and then you're working with people who are much older than you
Yes.
and who have been in the industry longer. And there is something about there's a lot of, I've been noticing generational divide in architecture from not only gender, but even the technology skills. Someone who's been in the industry for 50 plus years, doesn't maybe know how to use AutoCAD or Revit and then here you have someone new coming in who has all these skills, who knows all this new language. And that can be intimidating for someone older, but you come into the office now with a different power, especially of the technology that you bring in.
Yes, and I see it also the other way around. There are some skills that the older generation have, and how
Mm-hmm.
they can really thinking on paper is very different from being able to do it via software.
Yes.
When I studied architecture, I studied in India, which meant that we just had access to AutoCAD in my last year of the
Mm-hmm.
5 years, and then it was like all of us sharing a couple of workstations. So
Mm-hmm.
most of my training has been on paper, and
Mm-hmm.
we quickly learned AutoCAD before we went into the workplace for internships. But there's something about really thinking on paper, thinking using those skills, sketching, just building very basic models. That there's still a place for that as architects, and
Mm-hmm.
not to discount that. I don't think that ever will be discounted. But then there's other. It's like not discounting anything. Everyone's
Mm-hmm.
experience is really valid, and it's how you work
Mm-hmm.
together. I think the focus on how you work together with just not sticking to one possibility. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really, rather than having this rigid way of doing things. I remember when I was looking for, I think it was when I was leaving the hospitality industry and then starting to build this platform out to support people. It was recruiters that said I would never get a job without learning this software, without learning Revit. And I was not prepared to do that. I have skills that I can contribute. I couldn't believe that there were no jobs without Revit because just coming into the industry, but I had to promise that I was ready to learn in order to get a job. And I'm very clearly going in on a part-time role. Are you expecting me to commit to something, be over and beyond? So I just wanted more flexibility, I think, which I didn't see in the industry. And I think the industry could be more flexible with how they approach things.
No, absolutely. Yeah, as someone as me, because I kind of know Revit, for example, and my technological skills, the firm I previously worked at was very old school. My boss is in his early 80s now. And so, that was a different, we did a lot of hand drafting and computer work as well, which I want to come back to the power of hand drafting and hand sketching. I
Mm.
think I've had a guest on Salmon where we talked about the foundation of really any drawing is to learn how to hand sketch. And I think there's so much power. I thankfully in architecture school still started hand sketching and then we moved to computers. And
Yes.
there is definitely, it's nice to have that transition because you have that foundation and then you go into the technical drawings. But where I was going with that is it's about being flexible because architecture is such a broad field. And there is so much like when you're in architecture school, and let's say you're really good at project managing, and maybe you're not good at all of the design work. There is a place, or there should be a place for you in the firm where, yes, you can learn, whatever software it is. But if you're confident that you can really project manage and organize people and keep all of the meetings going, then there should be that place where a firm looks at, okay, we'll help this individual with learning whatever the program is, because that's teachable. But sometimes confidence right out the gates can be hard to teach. Like you have to have the experience, and like I'm sure you see with your clients that it's not just you talk to them one day and the next day they're confident masters, right? It takes time and it takes growth.
Yes, and maybe it's also got something to do with how we leave university with that expectation of what a job should look like. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's strange. It's a degree that opens your mind to so many things, but then the focus
Mm-hmm.
again narrows down to what should a job look like, what kind of practice. Maybe it starts there with perhaps this is easier for those who are coming into the industry now because they can see a wide variety of different roles, as you said, people working in
Mm-hmm.
different competencies, and still in architecture, there are people leaving and doing very interesting things too, adjacent to architecture. So they can see that much more than at least my generation of architects could see it. Yeah, so that's very important. And in terms of confidence, one thing I would say it's really important to know the value you bring. I think that is maybe the foundation, knowing the value. And I always encourage my clients to keep a record of what they have achieved. And it doesn't have to be, I helped the firm win a project that's this value, of this value,
Mm-hmm.
and we did this and we achieved that. I got awarded this. It can be small things, even the soft skills count. You held your team together at a time when, financial security of the firm was not very clear, or
Mm-hmm.
you helped somebody who was really new to the company just get up to speed. And all those things really count. And knowing what value you bring, which is not just the monetary, you're able to walk into a negotiation perhaps at your interview or a review. You're able to advocate for yourself in a much stronger way than if you're just walking into that meeting without that sort of,
Mm-hmm.
having that record. You can always look at it when you have sort of a few days, you're feeling down at work or how things are going on site. If somebody's really mean to you, you just have to open that and then remember how far you've
Mm-hmm.
come. Because confidence, we will, as you said, yes, I work with clients, but then there's no mastery of confidence. I think every new level will challenge you, and it's a part of the game. And
Mm-hmm.
if we aren't challenged, we don't grow. So I think it's natural as a human to seek that growth, although the growth is scary. But if you are able at each level to remember how far you've come, it's not easy, but to trust in that and trust that the opportunity that seems very scary now, that you really don't know whether you'll pull through, or you should just take a chance on yourself because you have
Mm-hmm.
done that in the past. The
Mm-hmm.
last time you were scared and less than confident.
I think that's a great idea of keeping a list. of even like you said, the like just when did you help your team? It's not did you get your team this project or anything. It reminded me too, I have a email folder that I keep emails, and when I worked at previous firms I would have this. It's called like positivity or something. And it's whenever I got a positive email from my boss, like, hey, good job on getting this done, or if a client wrote me something, or anytime there was something really positive in an email from whoever, from another team member, I would store those emails in this positivity folder. And if I ever kind of had this moment of doubt, I would just open the folder and just scroll through the emails and just get to read them and be like, oh, remember you did this and you did that. And so I think that helped me a lot. But I love your idea of also just keeping track of it's not just these like tangible goals like getting a submittal through, right? Getting this set of documents through, getting this project approved through the city or whatever it is, but it's also like you said keeping the team together or helping coordinate something. And so I think that's a really great idea, is to keep a track of them.
Yes, because sometimes that's not valued, you know. There's a lot
Mhm.
of, again, I'm going to go to how we are stereotyped. All the admin work gets
Mhm.
assigned to women, as we talked earlier, lots of
Mhm.
selecting interior finishes and things like that. But there is something that we can offer that is not really, you can't measure. You know, all these soft skills are really things that are not measured. They don't actually, well, in society's eyes, contribute to the bottom line, and they don't, you know, they're not the glamorous design achievements that a firm is excited about, can talk about to the outside world. But what if that firm was not, you know, what if everyone was insecure and started to leave when things got bad at the company, but you were not there to hold them together? I mean, that's a bigger cost, but nobody thinks about that. And I don't mean it's only women who do that, but then we just discount the value that we bring. If it's not that glamorous design work, if it's not the winning projects, if it's not the winning competitions or delivering projects, then it doesn't count. But no, there's a lot of our value in many different ways. And I think it's more a softer quality, maybe more feminine rather than female, rather than being attached to women, but a more softer. There are masculine qualities and feminine qualities, and it might be
Mhm.
holding somebody together, holding a team together might be a more feminine quality, which all of us have, you know, the masculine and feminine.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. And I think it's so true with, I think women sometimes fall into these roles of even like, hey, can you take notes? Can you do the, like, be the
Yes.
secretary of the meeting? And I know I've been called like the assistant before, like, oh, you're the assistant. Can you please, oh, are you the secretary? You know, because I look young and I'm the only female. I was the only female in the office besides our receptionist. So I think it's an easy role to fall into if you can't, and to get yourself out of it and just be like, no, today, thank you. You know, also learning to say no, which I am right now learning, even though I'm the owner of my own, now that I'm the owner of my own firm, I'm learning to even stand up for myself even more, say no to more things, especially when it comes to clients asking for me to reduce my price, which is something I have
Mhm.
been working on incredibly. That has been this first quarter of the year, that is the biggest lessons I've been learning, is, you know, to say no and to stand up for myself. And like you said, know your value. It is so important to know your value and to trust that what you bring to the table and what you can offer is valuable and at your rate, at whatever your salary is. Because that's another thing, is salary negotiation. I mean, you don't learn it in school. You never learn how to negotiate for yourself.
I had the same conversation earlier where I had to defend my rates. So it's a big learning curve when you go into business, but then
Mhm.
absolutely, you know, over the years, I'm like, I know what value I have made and created, and yes, when you go into business, you have the practice of asking for testimonials, etc., etc. So we're a bit more organized in that respect.
Mhm.
But then I just thought of a question. I mean, if it's hard for anyone to do, any of your listeners to do, I would just suggest, what
Mhm.
would disappear if you were not in the picture? If you
Mhm.
were not there, what would be missing? And then try to make a list of what would be missing. All
Mhm.
sorts of qualities that you bring, the wisdom that you bring, of course, the talents and the qualifications and the knowledge and the hard work, etc., etc. But what would be missing? Because when we experience loss of someone in our lives, especially someone very close to you, you just feel that big hole that's not there. And this is not the same thing, but we
Mhm.
have to be conscious of what we bring to the table, you know, in a 3D way, not just flat.
Mhm.
Yes, I've qualified as an architect, I've worked for 10 years and I have this certification. It's not just that. It's not a very 2D flat
Mhm.
CV that we are. It's more three dimensional. So to think about those things.
No, it's those soft skills that you mentioned. That's what it is. It's the hard skills, yes. Yeah, what programs do you know? What's your background? What's your like education? But there is so much to say about the importance of those soft skills.
Yes. And this is another thing I was thinking about while we were talking, because I think I would definitely say that maybe the previous generation of women had this pressure to really appear very masculine or to look the part.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe our generation, maybe that's, it's our choice. How do we want to present ourselves? Maybe we don't have to fit in
Mm-hmm.
those expectations, and that we should really take advantage of.
Absolutely, breaking that cycle. Because when you think about movies from like the 80s and the 90s, especially when it was that like working woman, working
Yes.
mom, I'm like thinking Diane Keaton. I know there's a few movies I can't think, like The First Wives Club. They're all in these like masculine outfits, right? They're in the suits
Yes.
and everything. They're trying to be the men. And it's just so true. You're right. Like now, this new generation of women in the workforce, they're bringing in kind of a more of a feminine, like for me, for example, I have pink business cards. My invoices are pink, like because pink's my favorite color. I mean, you see, my
Yeah.
microphone top is pink, my headphones are pink. And I've noticed like there's been comments like when I give my business card out, and I've gotten one or two comments like, oh, it's pink, and like some guy has laughed about it or something. And I'm just like, well, if you don't like pink, that's your problem, but this is my color. My choice of using this color or this font or whatever doesn't lessen of what I can do or my experience or my knowledge. It's just I'm bringing more of my personality into my company, which is
Exactly.
huge.
I was just going to say personality. I mean, as architects, you can't help expressing our personality to everything. We have to
Hmm.
design everything, brand everything, because
Hmm.
we are taught to think that way. And then how can your personality be a problem if it's thing?
I did have one question for you then. What would your advice be for someone, especially I'm kind of asking this advice for myself as well, when a client, tries to negotiate your rate with you? And what is your advice on kind of holding your ground and reevaluating, okay, here's how much my value is, and not letting that person shake your confidence?
It's the value of the outcome, I think, that is the easiest to argue for, because you can go down the rabbit hole of this is my value, and then, feel very insecure about defending your value. But then, value of the outcome, it's not about you. It lets you be a bit detached, and you're sharing their vision because they want that outcome. If you can talk about the outcome that you both want, it's a little easier than talking about the value that you bring. Being conscious of your value and using
Mhm.
that to talk about the outcome, because what flavor are you going to bring to that outcome? If it's interior fit out of their homes, what flavor are you going to bring? Why you and not another designer? But that's probably the easiest way, because I think we worry about our rates as businesswomen or our salaries as architects who are employed at a practice. We get a bit conscious, is this valid? Is this justified? And we probably don't want to have conversations that question, that's where we get
Mhm.
very self conscious. But then when you put the focus on an outcome which they also want,
Mhm.
it lessens the pressure on you to defend yourself, let's say.
Mhm.
If you're able to sell it as the outcome and what you can bring to it, and also how it's different to how someone else would. I mean, there's a reason they came to you for this discussion. You've
Mhm.
had perhaps more than one meeting to think about, okay, let's think about working together before the price conversation starts. So it might be good also to ask about why did they come to you right at the start, right at the outset? Where did they find you? Why did they choose you to contact? It is a user that, I mean, they are spending time meeting with you once or twice before you get
Mhm.
to price. So being really conscious about why did they come to you, and then having all that in your,
Toolbox, I guess.
yeah, toolbox. That's the right word. Your toolbox when you are making that. It's sad that we have to have the discussion, but then it's making us stronger as businesswomen. And sometimes when you say it out loud, you believe it more.
Mhm.
Yes, I would say that. Focus on the outcome, the joint outcome, and you
Mhm.
have a much easier job.
I'm gonna use that next time. I'm gonna really think about that because that's something. It's like I said, yeah, my confidence was shaken for
Yes.
sure. It was within 1 week. I had one person telling me my rates were too low, and then two clients telling me they were too high. And I was like, well, I can't
Oh,
please everybody. It was yeah, it was a very interesting, very interesting week for me.
uh,
And so it was like, okay, well, that's an interesting. It was great feedback. It was a great experience, but I love this approach that you have of thinking about the outcome together. So, how can clients work with you? Do you do one on one coaching? Is it group coaching? What kind of services do you offer?
I started out one on one because I was really, as I explained in the beginning, I was very connected to, very moved by that challenge that everyone was talking about. So I
Mhm.
started one to one. And that's possibly where I can do the most impactful work, because I'm working with someone over a period of, say, 3 to 4 months for ideally, but then we are really going in and doing some deep work and transformative work. They have a big goal or a challenge that they want to resolve, and then we work together through that. And the process is, it's hard to, there's no defined process in the sense of different shapes with different clients and their circumstances, but we start off, and by the third session of working together, we are really going deep and sort of questioning old beliefs and patterns that, they're ready to change, they're ready to be looked at. And then I think supporting them alongside while the new beliefs that they're ready to sort of take on, and, challenging the old ones, taking on new ones, and then implementing these things in the world and seeing not everyone will like when you change. So being there alongside them for that period of time, supporting them. And if it's specific things, like I can give an example for promotion, I usually find that promotion is not just an instant in time. It's like there is a continuum. It might be women go through all of these 4 stages. I mean, maybe some of them, but then I've worked with clients who approach me with building up the confidence to ask for a meeting to discuss promotion. And then they land an interview, then it becomes helping them with prepare their mindset for an interview. If they land the job, which, yes, most of my clients have, then it's overwhelm and imposter syndrome that kicks in immediately. And it's helping them navigate those challenges, settle into the role. And then I think it's not over there, which is why I like to work over a 4-month period, because you don't just, I don't want women to just be handled titles or get titles, but then really start to own their leadership, because that determines how much influence they have in the future, or the future of their career. To really start going from being, yes, new to this role, new to this project, to go from doubting themselves in every move they make to becoming confident decision makers that are pivotal to their practice or their organizations and to themselves. And of course, the ripple effect is there in other areas of their life. But the focus is always on the professional. I think that's where I've sort of niched into the professional world, but very much there are changes in their personal lives as well. And I would love to go into companies. This is what I'm also looking at right now. I'd love to go into companies and teach workshops, and I do them online, workshops as well, but I'd love to go in, because I'm having these last, conversations with women who are carrying me at a last resort before they decide to leave the company or the industry. And I want to go in earlier before that happens, reach as many women as possible. It's not as impactful as one-to-one, but then one-to-many, gets more women thinking about options, different ways of looking at themselves and their capabilities. And I would love to do that as well through group coaching, workshops, and maybe speaking.
Where can listeners find you?
My website is probably the best. It's ishwariyaRajamohan.com. I will share the links. And I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn. I would suggest Instagram if you wanted, resourceful tips and ideas every week. That's probably how regular. And I'm also launching a coaching program. Well, I launched it last week to support women at this moment in time who are already in a role that they have maybe landed recently, or a new project where they're kind of beginning to feel, oh, my confidence is taking a hit, and I'm really unsure of myself. So it's open for enrollment. If anyone would like to have a chat, you can go to my website and just book a call with me.
Perfect. I'll provide all the links in the show notes. Again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Katerina. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you as well. Thank you for listening to this episode of From the Honeycomb podcast. As we conclude, I want to express my gratitude for joining me in today's episode. I hope you have found it insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to rate, review, and click that like button so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to share this with your friends. You can follow me on Instagram at From the Honeycomb Podcast, and you can also further your support of From the Honeycomb by visiting the Patreon link provided in the show notes. Your contribution helps make more episodes possible. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe to my monthly newsletter, A Spark of Positive Energy, that comes out on the 7th of each month. Thank you so much, and see you next Friday.